What's going on? What's going on, world? You already know what this is. You already know what time it is. Welcome to the greatest show on earth. You know what it is. It's Confidence Factor Talks. That's right. We are here every Tuesday night at 6:30 p.m. sharp. Without further ado, my name is Rudy LaRose, and I'm in the building tonight with a very, very special guest coming to you live on stage. Man, I cannot wait to have this young lady come in our presence tonight. But before we do, I need you to do a few things for me. I need you to, in the comment section, put in that you are here, you are present, you are live, that you're feeling what we're talking about. We want to hear from you. This is an interactive show, as you know. So we're here to have heart-level conversation that's going to lead to transformation, baby. We're here to do it with confidence, right? And so I want to bring everybody on stage to have that conversation. Also, if you haven't had a chance, make sure to add StreamYard to your Facebook by going to www.streamyard.com/Facebook. That's right. And also, if you're feeling what we're talking about, do me a favor, in the comment section, put in hashtag heart level. Hashtag heart level. That means we hear you. We know what you're saying, Rudy, or Darian, or Javon, or Bobby, or Lamont, or Guest, or whoever is talking. Put in hashtag heart level. So it's a pleasure to have you guys tonight. Looking forward to a great, great show. Without further ado, I want to bring all of our co-hosts on the show tonight because we're ready to have a powerhouse of a conversation with this young lady. But I don't want to spill the beans yet. All I can tell you is her name is Gabrielle Jordan, and she's about to light this stage on fire. So be ready, all right? So without further ado, let's bring all of my guys on board. Ladies and gentlemen, I got Bobby B, I got Darian Hill, I got Dr. Love Jones in the building with all of us tonight. What's going on, fellas?
Yeah. Listen. I know we got a lot going on. I'm just excited to be here. I know you guys just came off a powerful leadership. Listen, I'm just excited to be here. I'm excited for everything, man. What's going on, you guys?
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to CF Talks. It's a special night. We have a special guest. We're talking about the presence of a man and the influence that he has in the success of his children. Now, this is an important topic. This is a very important topic. As you guys know, we here in Confidence Factor, we're focused primarily on helping men to unleash their riches, to unleash their gifts, to unleash their voice. As my co-host Rudy always said, that we have heart-level conversation that lead to transformation. Not just heart-level conversations, but we have courageous conversations, important conversations to help men to transform, to find their way, to discover their gifts, to discover their purpose, to develop their confidence factor. And we do that simply by creating a safe space. That safe space, of course, is through our man cave. That safe space is, of course, having these shows called CF Talks, where we have an opportunity to interview some amazing guests, change agents, individuals who are transforming their families, transforming their regions, transforming their community, and transforming their world. They're unleashing their riches, unleashing their gifts. And so we here at Confidence Factor are on a mission. And that mission is to empower the lives of over 5 million men. To do what? To start to have not just only heart-level conversations, but courageous conversations about things that are meaningful to the man, things that are meaningful to manhood, things that are meaningful to our transformation, so that we can be better leaders. We can show up more. We can put away the scarcity thinking, the limitation thinking, and really show up big in the world, show up more powerful, show up more presence in the lives for ourselves, of course, but for our families, for our community, and for the world. And so we're here at Confidence Factor really have created a space to support that agenda. And we're excited to be here to have this conversation because we know that, listen, the children are the future, right? We know that. And investing in our future is part of our legacy here in Confidence Factor. So having this conversation, bringing someone on who has been a trailblazer in serving the community, has had an influence in her life that has helped her to go on a path of service is surely an honor. And here in this community, we focus on some principles. We call it the SMART principle, to be able to generate transformation. Number one, we focus on our self-mastery. We know that working harder on yourself than you do at your job, working harder on yourself than you do in your business is the foundation for your success. You can't build success or anything big on a weak foundation. So working on that self-mastery is one of the key pillars here in Confidence Factor that we work on. And the next one is accountability. Listen, the organization, the training development organization said that the odds of you getting to your goals increases by 95% when you have accountability. And accountability doesn't mean that it's someone constantly watching what you're doing. It's just someone there to support you in your goals, to lock arms with you, to celebrate you, to honor the steps that you're making towards reaching those goals. And last but not least, you have to have the resources and tools to be able to build a successful business, to be able to build a successful life, to be able to build a successful relationship. You have to have the right resources, the tools, and the systems to implement to get to the results. So we are excited here at Confidence Factor to have this conversation with this amazing young lady who is just showing up and showing up big and saying no to fear and showing us the way. And we're excited to celebrate her. We're excited to honor her. And we're excited to hear from her story of the things that she's doing in her life and her business as a speaker, as an international speaker, as an author, and also to talk about this important topic about the presence of a man's influence in the success of children and the youth today. So, fellas, man, I'm really excited to have this discussion. This is going to be powerful. As a father, you know, I am just so honored to be in presence in this conversation. So we just came off of a leadership retreat recently, and as you guys know, it was phenomenal. So any shares from that leadership retreat before we get into our topic?
Well, before we jump in there, I want to acknowledge everybody that's in the chat because the chat is already lighting up. I want to say what's going on. We got Brazil in the house. We got Africa in the house, Philippines in the house, Jamaica's in the house, Antigua's in the house, Guyana's in the house, Haiti's in the house. Okay, then. Wayne Moody, what's going on, brother? We see you. We see you. And so I just want to acknowledge some of the people that are chiming in there. And man, Rudy, I like the way you brought us up. I kind of like that, man. I was about to say, ladies and gentlemen, your starting lineup.
Right?
Basketball team, right? So
and I was trying to line them up, man. I was trying to line them up big time.
All right, he said Fort Lauderdale, Jamaica. Okay, the Jamaican flags on it. Okay, everybody throwing the flags up now.
Oh man. Hey, listen, you know, we're international community, man. I love it. You know, you hear the accents, you see the accents, you see people coming through. I love that. Beautiful. The world of accents.
Yeah, just wanted to acknowledge all those people because they lighten up the chat. So we're already getting started. But yeah, man, listen, the leadership retreat was just phenomenal. Totally necessary. Totally abundant. I left full. I left rich. It was just, man. And you know, the coach that we brought in, Darian, is a wonderful pick. That was you couldn't have done better, bro. That was just having that coach come in was just a wonderful pick. So he just deposited so much, man. And I love how he helped us to clarify the vision, right, of where we're going and seeing it. It's way, way bigger than what we even thought it was. So that part for me was huge to see, like, you know, we had a vision, we got clear on that vision, and then the vision went even further. And that's how it is, right? You drive. Sometimes you only get 100, like Jack Canfield say, sometimes you only get 100, 200 yards at a time, but that's all you need. But you have to keep making that progress. So, you know, that's how we define success here, Confidence Factor. You know, it's the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. So to have that success and to see that we're progressing, to see we're moving forward, to see the vision get even bigger and to make some gains, that's awesome.
No, absolutely. And you know, one of the things that I love that Isaac talked about was this whole idea around spiritual agreements. That these spiritual agreements, once made, once embedded in our unconscious minds, directs our feelings, directs our actions, and ultimately directs our results. And so true change, true transformation comes with first, number one, identifying those spiritual agreements, and then getting to the business of making new agreements that is congruent with the things that you want. And I love that. And Bobby, you know, I was reading something today and I realized we've been saying this, but I'm gonna coin this quote, right? That success is a system, not a result, right? Success is a system. And I think Isaac really alluded to that in his presentation when he talked about the process of shifting these spiritual agreements so we can be congruent with the things that we want. So, man, it was absolutely phenomenal. And again, it is all part of the conversation that we continue to have in this community, which is about transformation. And so we're going to continue having that conversation tonight about transformation, about how, you know, one young lady has transformed herself and of course transformed the world. And so this is going to be a phenomenal. So I am so happy for the guests that are here tonight, whether you're in the man cave, whether you are outside the man cave, share this particular show. It is going to be one for the books. So Rudy, do you have you have the recording?
I had a favorite of actually the what do you call that? The thing we had to yesterday, over the weekend. Sorry, the meeting we had over the weekend was amazing. And one of the things that I loved the most, and I'm looking at it right now, was how we were able to formulate things on the fly because of the congruency of what we, you know, where we are and where we at in life. And I think it's important to bear that when guys get together and they speak, not only they speak, but they speak at a heart level, they speak at a courageous level, and are able to share what's really going on in their life. It opens up the window for greater things to come. And so I really appreciate that we're able to do that, because that is what the community is all about.
Wonderful. So Rudy, are we ready to show the video? Absolutely. So let's go ahead, and before we actually introduce the guests, we have a video to show you guys before we bring her on, and to give you guys an opportunity, a little taste of what you're about to witness tonight. So Rudy, feel free to take it away when you're ready, my brother.
Mm-hmm.
Like hearing someone twice, right? Truly an inspiration.
Gabrielle Jordan, you rock.
Fear will come. And when it comes, I don't want you to ask yourself, what if I fail? I want you to ask yourself, what if I succeed?
You don't have to wait till tomorrow to be a leader. Be a leader today. The world is waiting for your unique value to be put to use today.
There we have it. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, it's author, speaker, entrepreneur, and I'd say child prodigy. Ladies and gentlemen, make some noise for none other than Gabrielle Jordan in the building tonight. What's going on? What's going on?
Goodness, I feel hyped up. Oh my gosh.
Hey, Gabrielle, I wanted to say you're a starting point guard.
Yeah, exactly. Like, shoo, all right, let me get in here.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me all. I'm excited, especially after all that.
Oh man, listen, I get excited just watching that video, because in my mind I'm just picturing she is just getting started. Like seriously, like you're just getting started, right? So I'm just excited to see what you've been doing and the places that you've been, the people that you've encountered, but more importantly, the difference that you're making in the lives of people all over the world. So, well, first of all, thank you for being here and welcome to Confidence Factor Talks tonight.
Thank you. I feel very welcomed. I'm very excited. Thank you.
Well, we're happy to have you. We're happy to have you. As we get started, of course, everybody wants to know where are you from. You know that whole thing. Where are you from? Give us a little backstory of who you are. Of course, I got the personal backstory from your mom, but you know what? Nothing like getting it from you. So.
Well, I'll bundle it up. So I come from my dad. On my dad's side, he's from Washington, D.C. My mom's side, she's Trinidad, Tobago. And so a little mix, island girl, a little bit mixed with American, African American. And they've both fed a lot of that into me. So I'm very proud of both sides. And I'm also, one of the biggest things I always share about is I'm a 6th generation entrepreneur on my mom's side. So entrepreneurship has gone back long. I think the first entrepreneur was like a basket weaver, came from Ecuador and then came to Trinidad, and then there were just entrepreneurs after that. And so I feel like that's a big reason why, maybe even subtly why I am who I am, but seeing a lot of confident people in my family, seeing a lot of people who have made things for themselves. A lot of them have been also makers as well, like people who create with their hands and all of that, especially along the sides of like my mom's side. My grandparents, they make signs and things for companies and all that stuff. So also feeds into why I'm such a creator myself. But yeah, that's a little bit about me. I live in Maryland now. I've lived in Maryland my whole life, but I love to travel and love to see as much as I can. Yeah.
So you had no choice but to become an entrepreneur. Like, you had no choice in the matter.
It seemed like it, honestly. I was born for it. I was genuinely born for it.
So when did you first realize that? I know the story, but I don't know if the guys know. When did you first realize, there might be something to this thing that I'm doing here? When was that?
So it's really interesting because so my first business and my main business, which has evolved a lot over the years, but it's a jewelry company, Gabrielle Jordan. And I started making jewelry though when I was about 7 years old. I would just collect random stuff that I would I would find pieces of like junk jewelry on the street, broken earrings and things like that, bring that home, think of what I could do with it. And then when YouTube was invented, I would like go on there and like find videos and teach myself how to make jewelry. I fell in love with it at a pretty early age. I loved the sparkle and all of that. But I also knew I really loved, like, I don't know, the uniqueness, the design. Something about jewelry really caught my eye, and that something so, something could stand out above other things. So I was really interested in design and all of that. And so I taught myself how to make jewelry when I was 7 and with whatever I could find. And then eventually asked, craft store, hey, mom, you want to grab me some? It'll be fun. It's good for me. But it wasn't until about, I want to say 8 or 9 years old, I had finally built up the confidence, and I felt like, like I had the skill level to create something that I actually wanted to like wear to school, because I had not worn any of the things out before. And, I wore this one ring I called the bling bling ring out to school. And that first time I ever wore anything out, a friend of mine was so like loved it so much. She was like, oh my gosh, that's so pretty. Where'd you get it? And I'm like, oh, I made it. And she says, how much? And the first thing I think is, yeah, how much? And I tell her $5, and she buys it. Like the next day or like the next couple of days, I wear a bracelet. Another friend buys that for $10, and I'm like there at that point making jewelry, selling it on the school bus in the playground whenever I can, making a little side gig of being a jewelry, like this jewelry girl and stuff. And
I even had like a little home and saying. Yeah. I could see you coming home and saying, Mom, I made $100 today. She's like, what?
Never that much yet, but like it was soon. It happened quick. And it was actually funny. My parents actually didn't know that I was like making and selling the jewelry until
Mm.
I don't know, maybe like a few months in. And then I guess maybe they asked me like, where's all this jewelry going or whatever. But I think I eventually end up telling them. They were just like, what? Like, that's amazing. And that was actually one of the times I was with my mom. She told me about the history of entrepreneurship in my family. Though I'd seen it growing up, like I didn't actually know that it was a thing, that entrepreneurship was like its own thing. And so that was like when I think that night, I actually remember very vividly that night. I was like in there, and that's when she told me about it. And she asked me, like, would you want to like start a business yourself? Would you want to turn jewelry into a business? And I was like, I don't know what that means, but okay.
Do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you're 7, 8, 9, somewhere around
Yeah,
there.
at
You're
9.
doing your
Just at
jewel
that point.
about 9. Your friends are
Mhm.
buying all this stuff. You're like, okay, I don't know what's going on, but somehow they're buying it up, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so walk us through between 9, 10, maybe somewhere around there.
Yeah.
And then as you get a little older and your teens or even your preteens, what are some of the thoughts that start, or even conversations that start to happen with your parents?
Yeah. So I will actually just go ahead and I'm gonna start by saying that my parents, I guess as long as I have known, they've always been very intentional people. I think I knew from a very young age what maybe I didn't have the words for it, but I knew that they had intent for both my brother and I's lives. So much so that like every single night, my mom and then sometimes my dad, because like he's working or whatever, but he'd always pop in at a certain point. But my mom would always be in before we go to bed. She would pray over us, but she'd always start her prayer with you are the head, not the tail. You are above and not beneath. Everything you touch will be blessed as long as you put God first in your life. You are a leader, not a follower. Like all these things, like every single night. And she would say, mom loves you and dad loves you. My dad would pop in and be like, yes, he does, and then go back to work. But like it was all like I mean every single night. I mean every single night. Like that was ingrained in us, and the prayers were always, over our lives, but then also, saying that I would be speaking in front of millions, and she would say these things to us.
Wow.
That was all like I don't know if she ever intended me to be an entrepreneur or us to be an entrepreneurs, but she always intended us to be leaders, right? So it's interesting that for me, going from just making jewelry at 7 years old, learning how to make jewelry at 7 years old, then selling it at school at around 9, and then learning about entrepreneurship and having the wherewithal or just the courage or the confidence to say yes to being an entrepreneur, even though I didn't know what that was, and just jump into it. I feel like because one, they had so much confidence in me, like it just made it that much easier to have that much confidence in myself. And so around 10 years old was when Jules Jordan was officially like licensed as a business. I got the trademark and things like that. And I would go to these like events, like these like women like events and stuff. And I'd have like a booth with some of my pieces, and I would go to these events like every few weekends, and I would be selling and have my booth up and everything. And
were you the youngest in the room?
All besides the attendees' kids. Yeah, I was the youngest. The youngest.
Were they like, where's your mom and dad selling these jewelries, right?
It's funny too, because like my mom would always be there, right? My mom would always be there. She'd be at the booth with me, and people, I mean, oh my gosh, 9 times out of 10, people would come up to the booth, look at my mom, and be like, "Your jewelry is really pretty," and then she'd be like, "It's not my jewelry, it's hers," and I'm just there waving, like, "Yep, it's
right."
It's always the shocked expression, and that's like, I kind of lived for for those moments, because I found it. I didn't think that it was anything that special until I started seeing people's response to me. Like I was shocked by it, and then I thought, oh, that's really fun, that's really cool that this is actually different. And I started to really kind of go with that. For me, like sales and like being a salesperson for my jewelry was never my favorite part of the art and the business, but I loved talking with people. Like I loved being able to, like, when people would ask me questions and stuff about the jewelry, or like even like styling, like, but it was like all these opportunities. I felt like to one, break out of my actually a very shy person, but then two, to connect like within ways and talk about things that I didn't think for one, I had the capacity to talk about. And then two, to like actually, for a lot of them, inspire a lot of people. I was like, wow, I didn't know that me just doing jewelry, that doing this thing that I liked, that I loved, would inspire full grown adults 3 times my age. But yeah.
So speaking of inspiring, I heard you did something really inspiring around 14, 15, somewhere around there.
Yes.
You know, most kids, they go on, they have their quinceañeras, or they'll have their bar mitzvahs, or they'll have their different things, you know, they go on Disney trip, or, you know, go hang out with the girls. But no, not Gabrielle. You had to do something amazingly special. Tell us a little bit about that.
I hope I am the right thing, right? Because I think I'm thinking of the right thing. Because honestly, it's one of the biggest things in my life. But I will backtrack just for a moment. So again, I started as just making jewelry. Never expected anything more than jewelry. When I was around 10 years old, there was like this competition in school though, and it was like a write a book competition. So you wrote a book, you submitted the book and all of that. So I wrote my book about entrepreneurship because my friends would be asking about it. And I was like, okay, sure, I'll write a little book or whatever. I wasn't that excited about it. That's probably why I lost. But when I got the book back, there was a note from a judge that was in the competition. They were like, you know, this is really inspiring. You could inspire a lot of people, young or old. And it kind of lit something in me. I was like, oh, okay. I didn't think about that. I thought I was just doing something for fun. And I learned about self-publishing and I was like, okay, maybe I actually want to do that. Maybe I want to inspire people, like really for real with this. And so I ended up rewriting the book with a lot more intent and energy into it, published it at 11 years old. And then that book soon became a bestseller within, I think, around 12 or 13. And around that same time, I auditioned and was able to do a TED Talk, which was crazy. Crazy. So to go, like, honestly, for me to go from like, it was so little time too, like from 10 years old was the official start of the business to 13 being on a stage in front of hundreds of people talking about the same title of my book, which was The Making of a Young Entrepreneur. Mind-blowing for me.
Wow, that is awesome. So now you're a full-blown entrepreneur. You realize it. There's something going on, something special going on. Walk us through the time when now you're starting to make decisions. And we're going to talk, obviously, about our topic for tonight, which is, does the presence of a man influence the success of their children? But I want to finish up by walking us through, now you're becoming your own. You're about to, you know, be out of mom and dad's house and so on and so forth. What was that journey like to figure out, okay, what is the next step for you? And what was maybe some of the motivating factors of you making these decisions, going from TED Talk now to, you know, now going on your own, maybe choosing college or, you know, whatever you decided to do afterwards?
The most challenging moments of my life, to be honest, that whole space was because around 8th grade or so, I transitioned into homeschooling and homeschooled throughout high school because, you know, life was genuinely like unreasonably busy in terms of trying to balance both school and the business. And you know, my school wouldn't really work with me. So, and my mom, and I was honestly way more into homeschooling. Like I wanted that me out of there. I'm learning so much more in real life than I want to do in there. So, so I had transitioned into homeschooling. And so as I started to narrow, you know, the end of all of that, I was really thinking about like, okay, what do I want to do? Do I want to do college? Do I need it? Do I want to keep focusing on the business and things like that? But at the same time, I was also struggling a lot, like mentally and things. I was dealing with like kind of like a silent mental issues, just feeling really bogged. I mean, I was never diagnosed, but depressed was really what I was feeling, but it was like very functional. And it wasn't because of necessarily the work. It was more so because when I wasn't really expressing some of the things I was feeling, like some of the loneliness I was feeling, or wasn't really expressing some of the confusion and uncertainty I was feeling within who I was and what I was doing and why I was doing it. Because, you know, so much of my life was just like, you know, propelled into this excitement, but I'm now at this age, I'm a teenager. Well, I'm like actually starting to get a great grasp on like, oh, who am I? Like, like, oh, who is this person? I've never really thought of that before. I haven't really asked myself that question before. And I was juggling with a lot. And it was around 18. I actually had a bit of like a breakdown, and I decided that like I'm going to go to college just because I don't know how to deal. I don't know how to deal with some of the things that I'm dealing with. And I wasn't really sharing anything with my parents or any like no one knew except for if my mom caught me crying at one point, and she'd just be like, "Oh, are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, I'm fine. I want to go to college." And that's my excuse is that, "Oh, I'm crying because I want to go to college." That's why. And yeah, so anyway, that was honestly my main decision, my main reasoning when I was like kind of thinking about what am I doing next. I decided to go to college strictly because I was in this place where I was figuring out a lot about myself, and kind of juggling between the pure desire to want to be of service in the world and to keep giving, but then also not really sure how to give to myself or who I was in it. So it was an interesting balance, interesting struggle that I was going through. But yeah.
Wow.
I just want to, wow, thank you so much for your share, Gabrielle, and your transparency and your vulnerability in that share. We've created a space to be able to have those conversations, those hard level conversations. In fact, one of the things that the enemy that we're fighting in this community for men is something called the lid. A lot of men are feeling lonely, they're feeling isolated, they feel like they don't matter. And so for you just sharing your story and being open to just, let us know that, hey, listen, you have gone through that transition and continuing to evolve is really, really just something to be celebrated in the fact that you are communicating and sharing that now and using that as a way to help others recognize the need to express it. So I wanted to go back to something that you shared, which was intentionality. As we talk about the importance of a man's presence, and of course, we know that mom and both parents played an important role in your life. But we wanted to, just for the benefit of the men in this community, hear from you as to the intentionality that you've seen given to you specifically and how that shaped and impacted you as you move through your life, whether it be in business and personal growth. What was that like and continue to be in your process?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's interesting, for one, with both of my parents. For one, I've always been a very observant person from very young. So my parents we often joke that nobody really remembers much of when I was a baby because I was just quiet and just there and just watching everything. And so, and it's funny. So I say that because I think it's, for me, I've been able to pick up the way that my parents have operated in my life. And like I said, it's been intentional. I a little bit about with my mom's side, but with my dad, he grew up in Southeast DC, not a pretty spot of DC. He grew up with friends who died because of the crack epidemic. He died, you see friends who died and got, stolen from, picked on, bullied, whatever. But he grew up in a house with his mother, who was single household mother. He had a younger brother. And in that home, there was structure. In that home, there was discipline. In that home, there was strength. And I think he carried that very much into just throughout his life, but also within our home. After that, he went into the military and he's done a lot of other things. But I feel that within the home, because he is that source of strength, discipline, that he's that rock, and I think it's fascinating because where my mom was intentional, my dad was focused. My mom had a lot more of the new, even though she didn't know what she's doing, she knew the assignment. She knew what God was putting on her heart, so she led in that. But my dad did not quite know exactly what the assignment that my mom had, but all he knew is what mom was telling him, right? Mom, how mom was leading in that. And so he was leading in terms of what that assignment was. He was leading with the focus of okay, if these kids are going to be leaders, we need to make sure that they're strong. If these kids are going to be leaders, we need to make sure that they're disciplined. If these kids are going to be leaders, we need to make sure they can follow through, those are the things I remember growing up that was so important, and that he continued to try and to instill in myself, I know specifically, and in my brother. But like, I remember when I was younger, just getting started in the business, in the jewelry business, and I was really nervous, like at the very beginning, because I had, I started going to these events and stuff and started selling, but they weren't frequent. They were like every now and again, pretty sparse, because it's the beginning of the business, right? And I started getting really nervous. I was like, I just like quit this because like it's not really a success. Like it's not a whole thing. Like, should I just stop it now while things were good and just move on with my life? And I remember going to my dad, or my dad came to me. I forget how it happened, but I remember where we were like sitting like in like the living room area. And I was telling them, I was just like, I feel just really terrified. I feel like I should just like quit now or whatever. And my dad responds, this is how my dad responds to everything. He's such like, he's a cinematic person. He's a producer and director. He's a very cinematic person. And he responds to me by he just starts, if you think you're beaten, you are. If you think you dare not, you don't. If you'd like to win, but think you can't, it's almost certain you won't. If you think you're outclassed, you are. You've got to think high to rise. You must be certain in yourself before you can win the prize. Life's battles don't always go to the stronger or faster man, but sooner or later, the one who wins is the one who thinks he can. And I was like, all right.
Your dad is a genius. Yeah. That's all I have to say. He's a genius. That is my favorite quote in all the world. Your dad's a genius. I want to meet him now. Right?
Yes.
Man, so you're in the midst of going through this, and he stops and actually says that to you.
The whole quote, the whole poem. And actually the reason why I know it's so ingrained is because I've used it at the end of, ever since then, I would use it at the end of every speech for a few years. I would use that same speech because that moment was so impactful for me. Like it was major. It told me so much, not just about like, oh, the situation that I was like, what I was dealing with and how I should move forward, but like about my dad, what he expects of me and what he sees in me. And he's literally saying that like, you can do whatever you want to do. Just know what you think is what's going to happen. Just know that how you approach this mentally is how you receive, was what you receive physically. And so it wasn't like him telling me, you've got to do this. You've got to, you've got to keep pushing, just go harder, just go harder, just go harder. No, he responds with this poem of all things. Like from a man, you don't always think that you'd get like some poetic moment, but of all things, he responds with this poem that basically meets me exactly where I am and also inspires me to keep moving forward. It was everything. And that's just, it carries through. That's how he responds with a lot of things, Yeah.
Yeah. And Gary, you know what I love about that one too, is that it never gets old. I've been chewing on the same one for about 22 years and it never dies down. It has the same power it has from the first day I've ever heard it. So I definitely understand what you mean. It's something you can really pull on, especially in the moments of adversity or when you feel like giving up or walking away. So that is just amazing. Beautiful.
Yeah. So that intention is definitely followed through within my life, and just from, again, both my parents, but since we're talking about men here, like that, who my dad's been in that for sure.
Gabrielle, one of the things I wanted to just kind of touch on, I love how you were able to beautifully talk about the understanding of your dad's story, because so oftentimes it's hard to relate to someone in understanding why they show up the way they show up if you don't know their story. How has that been able to help you with your relationship with your father, being able to understand his story?
Yeah, so that goes into a lot. So I'll try and like condense that for sure. But it's interesting growing up as a girl with a very strong father who you're very similar to. It's fascinating because like, as my father and myself we're very similar. We're very stubborn, strong-headed, strong, independent people, sensitive but not emotional, and like it's just kind of like this interesting in between place. But we're also very different because he's a man, and the way that he tends to move about things, and also he's a man that came from where he came from. So he tends to move through things, which I've learned, in a lot more of a survival mentality, hit things head on, kind of like push through, and kind of keeps things in, inside as well. And then, I look at that and it makes sense now. But before, it didn't. Like when I was younger, it didn't make as much sense to me. I saw our similarities, but I saw our differences, and I was just like, why does he do things like this? Like when we were younger, he had a lot harder time with his emotions and stuff, because he was still just coming out of all of that, that how he grew up. So he had a harder time with his emotions, and he'd be, he'd get angry pretty easy and stuff. And I'd just be like, why is he like this? I don't understand, and as he's progressed and everything, as we've gotten older and everything, he's just growing so much. But I do feel like for me, like when I was younger, it was so much harder to understand why he would operate the way that he did, and it would kind of cause a bit of distance between me and him. There were certain things I just wouldn't come to him about, certain things I just wouldn't say to him, because I'd be afraid of his response, or I'd think that he'd be upset, or certain things. And so moments like that poem, right? Those are the kind of moments that like would shock me. Those are the kind of moments that would put me like in awe, of this man who like has such a unique way of expressing himself that I'm still trying to understand. And so as I've been getting older, really, especially within my relationship with him, maturing in the relationship with him, there was this one moment actually, a few years ago, 2019, where our similarities and differences really butt head. And I think also our strengths and weaknesses really butt head. So where we were both weak, it hit. And our strengths was what carried us out of it, but it hit with our weaknesses. So our communication, like I said, he's a very strong, stubborn person, and at that point had a much harder time expressing his emotions. And so we would get into these debates and stuff like all the time. It used to be my brother and him that get in debates all the time, but when my brother went to college, it was me and him, always button heads, always in debates. And the thing with my dad was that, like, he needed to be right, like he needed to like get it all, like he needed to be the one, like, yes, my point's correct, just listen to me. And I'm the one that's just like, but like maybe, like maybe, possibly. And I'd be stubborn with that too. So I'd start to fight him on it, like, just like hear me. Why don't you just hear me, And so at one point, there was one really heated like debate that we had where he actually said to me during the conversation, in certain words, in certain terms, like some way, I might inflate it now just because like I'm gonna hurt feelings, but but at that point, he had said to me, he was like, we got really heated about something, and he basically said, well, your opinion doesn't matter here. And I was like, what? Excuse me? And this is interesting for me because I grew up in this family where no question was void, everything got an answer. Every conversation was talked about, every opinion mattered. We talked about everything. And we grew up being leaders, confident, trying to be confident in ourselves. And so when he said that to me, it distinctly basically went against my entire wiring. And so that upset me. That really upset me. I walked out. He was pissed at me because I walked out. Like, yeah, I probably shouldn't have walked out, but nevertheless, I was upset about it. And I had made a decision in my head at that point that I was just like, I don't know how to be with him. Like, I don't know how to do what I need to do in this relationship to make it flourish. So maybe I need to step back and just try to see him as he is and not expect anything more, right? And I felt like that was the only way that I could respond to this without absolutely cutting him off, without shutting him off, but also giving myself space to breathe, right? And so within that time period, which I want to say was maybe a couple months, where I really just kind of stepped back from my dad, and we hung out with the family, but I was pretty distant. But I'd be watching him. I would just be watching him and just like trying to understand him silently without any expectations. And within that time, I grew to understand the sensitivity in his nature and where he came from and why he had to be so strong at that point, and why he still brings that with him now, and that he might not necessarily, especially now he definitely moves in it more, but at that point maybe he just didn't know that he was safe. Maybe he would respond with the survival instinct, with the punch, with the hit hard, because that's how he knew how to fight back. not knowing that this wasn't a fight, not knowing that this wasn't, this wasn't an argument, this was a conversation. And so I started just kind of picking up these little pieces as he'd communicate with other people, and started seeing that, okay, it's personal. First of all, it isn't about me. It's personal. It's not about me. And if I just rock with that, it can be just that. And then a few months later, and I honestly feel like, and I'm just, before I say this final thing and I'll finish this, but I honestly feel like, just like with that quote, the one who wins is the one who thinks he can. It applies with every single thing, right? Like, not just with winning, but with love. The one who loves is the one, who thinks he can, the one who gives, who thinks he can, the one who earns money is the one who thinks he can, right? Like, and so I think that within my relationship with my dad, there was this, in that time period, I decided, I was just like, I'm going to love him for how he is. And hopefully he loves me too, hopefully he'll be able to show that too. And I think that he can, but he maybe just needs more time. And I need time to grow in how to love in that way. And a few months later, we were all, the four of us, my family, in the park walking around. And I didn't know any of what he was, how he was growing within that time until later. But he walks up next to me, and this is a rare thing, but he walks up next to me and he's just like, I really want to apologize for how I've been over the last few months, or or what I said to you, a couple of months back. And I'm just like, and he goes into explaining how he's been growing and everything, and how he was explaining how he sees a lot of himself in me. And so he often fights a lot of, he fights himself through me as well, but also he is, he grows through me as well. And I was just like, all this that he was sharing with me. And of course, I didn't know any of this. But I think for me, the simple act of being able to understand that our differences don't make us incompatible, that our differences don't make us unlovable to each other. It just makes us different, allowed for whatever space that was necessary, for and God obviously moving in that as well. Like, there was work that he was doing on him, and work that God was doing on me. And because I guess we were both able to do that work and also see ourselves and see each other, that he was able to come and, be this father who was able to actually apologize to his daughter and make amends, for something I didn't even know he was upset about. But I think basically my roundabout way of saying all of that is that this is not every situation, because sometimes situations are really messy. But within my particular situation, where a father was truly trying to do his best, and messes up, that I think as you get older, the young person getting older, and it's important that we learn how to love. It's important that we try to understand a person. That's really the heart of loving, is understanding a person. And I think if you put that energy out, it's bound to come back to you. Maybe not from the same person, but from somewhere. But in this instance, my dad, I think he responded to me and responded to my pain, but also the way that I was handling that pain. So yeah, I hope I answered that, but there was a lot in there.
I would love to jump in on that.
Go ahead, Dr. J. And then I got a final question for her, because I definitely want people to know about what she's doing. So go ahead and do that, and then we'll ask her a final question.
What you just said is, I could picture me and my daughter being the same way. I have an 11-year-old daughter, right? And coming from Newark, New Jersey, both my parents is from Guyana, so I come from that Caribbean background and stuff. So I have a very more abrasive way of living and doing things, opposed to her mom. My mom is more gentle, more, caring. I'm more, stern and sound. And so we will have these little back and forths, right? And I can literally see, as she grows older, how we're going to collide like that. But what's beautiful, what you just said, was you learn to accept your dad for who he is. And sometimes we come from, especially come from me. I was born and raised in Newark, New Jersey, so I've had some of the experiences your dad had with drugs, violence, and all that. So it's certain things that you just can't just shed off like that. And for me, I've done a lot of work on myself to let it go. So what you said is very key, to learn to accept them and love them the way they are, because that's what causes person to change. Not the, oh, you need to change. That never works. It's the loving them, meeting them where they at. And I think what you just said is very powerful. And I hope that a lot of people are gaining something from that, because as a father, I can learn. And for me, I've always been working on my approach with my daughter, because I understand that as a young girl, that energy comes off a little bit different. It's a little shocking to you when you see it.
Indeed. And I just want to add really quick, because one thing as a child, there is no way I would have known how to respond that way if there was not already an example set like that in my home, right? Like love was an example. So there was no way that I would have been able to see where my dad was and actually be like, okay, I need space, but I'm still going to look, I'm still going to observe, I'm still going to love. So from both, even though my dad struggled, he did what he could to show love. My mom showed love, right? I had, family, but so even if like you're as you're saying in your position, Dr. Love, that like Dr. Love Jones, that like, the being the abrasive one, it is very important to like still set some kind of precedent to show love as much as you can, because you can't expect a child to learn how to love unless you set that precedent too. So, but yeah.
I got
hey,
two final questions. Yes.
Rude, before you jump in, I just want, because I think that we got to highlight just that one little piece, Gabrielle, just get really quickly. What was the impact on you from a love space, right? From a heart space, when your dad approached you with the apology? What did it do for you? How did it impact you from a love space?
It was so completely unexpected is the first thing. I was not expecting or even asking, right, for that apology. I was moving on without it, right? But the fact that he did, especially being my father, who again, like, he apologizes when he knows he's wrong. It's not all the time, right? Like, so he comes to me in such a like a humility too. Like, it's the way he came. Like, it's as if he really knew that I was hurting with something. Like, he knew that he hurt me with something. Maybe he didn't know exactly what it was or how, but he knew that it hurt me. And he was willing, whatever it is that he did within that time, whether it was all about me or not, he was willing to come and be humble about it. And I think specifically within like seeing a man do that is particularly it's changing. Like, it changed me, I feel like, because like I said, my dad and I are very similar, so we're both very stubborn, which means that like to see him be able to put down his pride, which is something that he struggled with for a long time, and I think so much of us do, right? To see him put down his pride for his young daughter, right? It made me like just think about, and just even to this day, I think about how many times or how much I need to put down my pride to apologize, like just because of that moment, to see, because that was an instilling moment, right? That was like a core memory, right? Like that apologies, true humble apologies, they matter, right? And they can affect the way that not just you and that person operate, but also how that person goes and operates with other people. And for me, I know that like it taught me how to apologize. That was one of the many experiences that taught me how to apologize, that taught me how to humble myself. But then to see it from a man, I know I've felt throughout my life, I've struggled with relationships with men and like kind of having certain fears around men just because of being a woman. Like, it's pretty terrifying, feeling you can be close, to a man. And I feel like my dad, especially from that moment, there was a level of trust that was formed in that. Like, I feel like I learned in that I could trust this person with my hurt, not just my happiness.
That's awesome. That is awesome. So you've traveled around the world. You've met a lot of young people. Two questions. One is, what is the sentiment out there with young people as it relates to their dad? What are you hearing? What are they saying? One, or even a man in their life. It could be a dad. It could be an uncle. It could be a grandparent. It could be, whatever. And two, what can we expect from you moving forward as we share, your, of course, your website, and we'll share your Instagram as well. What can we expect from you moving forward?
So for the first question, it's kind of a mixed bag. I know a lot of people, like friends, who grew up with only their mom, or and I know people, I actually have quite a few friends who grew up with both their parents, but even still, I always hear mom brought up more. Mom's always brought up more. But when it's I love this question because this definitely makes me think about, like, kind of take stock on what I actually experience and what, like, socially, like in terms of social media or even media itself, tries to present or portray. And so, like, I think about it, like, from the friends that I have that have both parents in their home. It's not like their lives are, better just because they have both parents, but I do feel like there comes from, like, there's like these different way of thinking, like the perspectives are a bit different. Maybe a little more, it's interesting to me to see. But for those that I do know that come from just like their mom predominantly, it's really interesting because I'm actually in a relationship right now with a guy who came from a single mom, and he is one of the most, like, the kindest, like, most empathetic and, like, caring person that I've ever met. And I've talked to him about this. I'm just like, but yet he's also very, like, he walks with confidence, and he has, like, this, posture about him, like he's he's a man or manly and all that, right? And so I've talked to him about this. I've just been like, what is this? Like, how did you become this? Because I've met people who, just have their moms, and there's a lot more of, like, a meekness to them, a shyness to them, or they're, they're struggling a little bit more, or maybe they're more angry. I've seen that too. With him, and it's very different. And I've asked him, and he's told me, one, he feels like God has definitely postured him, like, in this relationship with God, like, it's postured him to be the person that he is. Like, he would not be this person without God. But the other thing he said was that what he does know of his father is that he might not have been that great of a guy. So it's very possible that not having that particular father figure in his life was actually an aid to him, and that without that, he was able to fill that void with other male figures who were actually positive role models for him that actually helped him to this person that he is today. And so, for the reason why I answer with that particularly is just because I find the conversation around father figures, or having a father in the home, interesting, because I think what matters most, and that's both for moms and dads, is the right kind of figure. Like, it doesn't matter if you have both parents in the home, if both parents don't know how to love, or are abusive, or are, alcoholics, or are, whatever, right? It doesn't matter if they're both there, if they are both inputting these, traumas and negativity, right? What matters is if you have that some form of both positive, of some kind of positive role in both ends. And so I find it very inspiring on his end that without his father, his response is to seek out, and still to seek out, positive male, enforcement, I guess, instead of trying to search for just specifically that father role. But again, I don't like to speak too much to it personally, in that for me, I did grow up with both, and they were both very positive, though, imperfect. And I've seen how that's affected me. And I do strongly believe that having both a male and female figure in your life, maybe not just the home, but like your life, like having that strong, reliable figure, is really important to a young person's development. That's why I love when they have these mentoring groups and stuff, that male mentoring groups where, you know, men go into, you know, and mentor these young men, because it is important, and young women. I think it is important. I know I need that. So yeah, so that's my response to that. It's still something I think it's interesting, because it's something I was thinking a lot about as you were asking the question, just like that is, it's helping me take stock on that more as well. But yeah, so
what's next?
What's next? So I am currently working on a few different projects. I am working on a book that will be coming out. Well, final draft and everything will be done this year, so hopefully it'll be out by next year. It is discussing the mind, the kind of the way that there's pressure placed on the mind, how it forms, breaks, fractures, and how we can rebuild the mind. And then I am also working on a collaboration with my mom. She has her own company, but we are doing a project that is focused on helping people discover what it is that makes them unique. I've talked about unique value before. If you've ever seen videos with me or interviews, unique value. But we're also going to be talking about in a place in which we are sharing that to help people, servant leaders, individuals develop their unique value, to form their minds so that they can create the kind of service and work and life that they want to build. So just keep an eye out for me on my website, GabrielleJordanInspires.com, as well as my Instagram, Gabrielle Jordan INTL. There will be updates there. But yes, yeah.
That is awesome. Awesome. Well, it's been such an honor and pleasure to have you, Gabrielle. There's so many more questions, I'm sure, I want to ask, the guys want to ask, and we definitely got to bring you back. We will follow up with you. You might see a bunch of guys show up with the Confidence Factor shirt in your talks, your next TEDx perhaps, and you'll know we'll be the guy shouting from the back of the room that, what'd you say? You said the one who thinks he can. The one who thinks he loves, right?
Yes.
So we'll be shouting from the back of the room. Thank you so much for giving us incredible value today. We appreciate you and your family as a whole, and we look forward to the many endeavors that you'll be doing in the future.
Thank you so much. Y'all are wonderful to talk to. I definitely would want to come back for sure.
Awesome. Hang backstage with us real quick. We'll be right back with you. Bobby, take it away.
Guys, just another awesome show here on Confidence Factor Talks. We're just super excited because we are bringing in the best of the best to talk to you guys. Transformation is what we're all about here at CF Talks. We're excited for you guys watching the show. Come back next week, man. We're going to have people back to back each and every Tuesday. Tonight's inspiration injection. History will judge us by the difference we make in the everyday lives of children. And that's from Nelson Mandela. And remember, as we always say at Confidence Factor, in everything that you do, make sure you keep it heart level. See you guys next week.
All right. See you guys next week.